So Andrew's going to be talking about accounting. So Andrew's actually one of Sydney's highest qualified accountants and probably one of the smartest blokes you'll ever get to meet as far as qualifications goes. He basically has it all, and if he hasn't got it, he's studying to get it. So AJ and I were having a good chat just before the end of the financial year. Came on and did a webinar for our VIP members, which was a great webinar. A bit croaky, because it was a bit crook, but we got through it. But it was a really good conversation about your numbers. So sometimes you work really hard in your business and you think you should be achieving better results, but then you get to the end of the financial year and you get your financials back from your accountant and it doesn't quite sing the way you want it to. So it comes back to simplifying things. So stepping back, looking at the key numbers in your business to find out where they can be tweaked. And sometimes it's just a matter of tweaking them in small manners to get a better result. And if you tweak enough of them, you might even get an even greater result. All right, so the way we roll in Breakthrough for Business, if you haven't been here before, every time we introduce a speaker, we get up on our legs and we give him a big, huge round of applause. So if you could stand up and give Andrew Jeffers one of those big round of applause, that'd be fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Hello. I'm here. All right. Hey, thanks very much. Hopefully I'm not too loud. Thanks for the standing ovation. I haven't had that for a while. Especially don't get it at home. Last year, 10,720 businesses went into insolvency. That's businesses, companies. That's not even considering individuals. So individuals go bankrupt, companies go insolvent. So 10,700 businesses went insolvent. And a lot of that is because those guys don't know how their business runs or the numbers or everything's going gangbusters, and then all of a sudden they turn around, there's no cash in the bank, or they get a massive BAS statement, or they go and speak to the accountant. The accountant says, well, you need, $30, $40, $5, $10,000 to pay for your BAS. And they say, well, I don't have it. So, I mean, it's a symptom of small business. Anyway, look, just quickly, we've got a company called Aussie Tax Time. We're a CPA practice. And if I can get this right, there you go. There's our mission. So I've worked all over the world. I've worked in massive companies, but now we just run this accountancy practice which helps small businesses, because the biggest reason why businesses fail is because they don't have their handle on the numbers. They don't know what's coming through the door. Now, even if you don't have sales, if you're spending too much than you're actually getting in, then it doesn't matter how big or how small your sales are, you're still going to go bankrupt or go insolvent. So anyway, our mission is to educate and enable Australians to easily manage their financial affairs and to help them create wealth and abundance in their lives. So hopefully today, what we'll be able to do is just give you guys some ideas about how to manage those numbers. Now, we have an outcome for today. Everybody, we're going to do some workbook stuff later. Now, I specifically haven't given it to you in that pack because I don't want anybody distracted. But we are going, everybody in this room is going to walk out after 75 minutes with a 12-month financial plan. Okay? That's my promise to you. Are we happy about that or not? Yes. Okay, fantastic, good. All right, now, I was working on my numbers on the way down here. So did you know that Wollongong has a population of 202,047 people, apparently? That there are 12,290 businesses operating in Wollongong? That you have 125 accounting firms? That there is one Australian taxation office, which also incorporates Centrelink? That there's apparently one large police station? There are 6 shopping centres. To get here by train, as I know last night, took me about 2 hours. It's 84.6 kilometres down from the city to here. So why am I telling you things like that? It's because numbers aren't just all about finance. Numbers are about various different things in your business. So what I wanted to discuss first, and let me just get my stuff together, is I just want, let's not talk about accounting for a while, and let's just say we're going on a journey. So if we decided we were going to walk to the Northern Territory, what is the first thing we would have to understand? How far it is. Fantastic. So how far is the Northern Territory? What's the other thing we'd have to understand? To know where it is, exactly. What else? I'll write these down. Okay, so distance. My writing and spelling is atrocious, by the way. Distance. The route. What else? Time. Okay. Yep. Exactly. Okay, so provisions. Yep. Have you already looked at my presentation? Okay, weather. Hopefully I spell it correctly. W-E-A-T-H-E-R. I think that's right. Yeah, maybe. Okay, W-E. Anyway. What else? How are we going to get there? Okay, so we're walking, so it'll be part of the route. Yeah. What else? Okay. Yeah, exactly. What else might we think of? Well, we're going to the Northern Territory, so yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So it's like, good, we're in the Northern Territory. Okay, so let's be specific, right, about the destination. That's a good point. What's the goal? What's the point? Okay. Yeah, we're not... Who was that movie? Forrest Gump? Just went running? Okay. Got a long way. I don't know if you achieved anything. Fantastic. So there's all these things that we need to understand and we need to work out. So the very first thing, and the last person, who was that who said, what's the point? Excellent. What's the point in going there? So we've already decided we're going to have a point to go there. So we need to know what the distance is. We need to know how many kilometres we can actually walk per day. We also need to know about the weather, because maybe we have to walk at night instead of during the day because it's too hot. What support vehicles we need? What are the laws and regulations about us running on a road? Do we need a car in front and a car behind? What provisions do we need, assuming that we can't, actually grab some on the way? Or if we can grab some on the way, what's the distance across the Nullarbor or whatever, where the GAN train goes all the way up the top? Nearly knocked that over. So all these things that we need to know. Now, what happens along that journey if we start hoeing into the provisions? We might decide to drive the rest of the way. But if we start going through our provisions a lot faster than we were supposed to, what's going to happen at the end of the trip? You're going to run out of steam, right? You're going to run out of steam. So what we're trying to understand is that in order to get to a journey, and the journey is your business, you need to know, one, why you're going there, and I think Kim will probably help us with that later. We need to know what we're supposed to do. I mean, it's fantastic, and I'm sure we've met a lot of people who say, I'm doing this, and you go, that's awesome, you go and do that. But they don't actually plan. So I could say I'm going to the Northern Territory, and everybody, all my friends would say, oh, that's awesome because we know you do what you say, but you still need to go and do the logistics. You need to do the planning. You need to get your support team. You need to do your provisions. You need to worry about the weather. You need to know about your goals. You need to know how long you've got to do it. Like, if I've got it next year, that's fine. And pace yourself. So these are all the things that you need to do in your business in order to make sure you know where you're going. Now, let's think about provisions as cash. What happens if you don't plan things effectively and you start blowing too much cash? You're going to run out, and then you're going to be like the 10,729 people last year whose business went insolvent. Of course, you guys won't, because you're here listening to really good stuff from everybody and part of a great program. But the point is, people fail to plan. You've heard it so many times. It's funny, I saw a guy speak, a fellow named Jack Daly, fantastic speaker. He's, I think he was 65 when he qualified for the Hawaiian Ironman. Now, that's one of the hardest things, the Ironman, to actually get into. Not probably the different stages, but 65. Anyway, and he's American. What he said is that most high school football teams are run better than some companies because they have a playbook. They know what they're doing. They practice. They don't, on a Saturday morning or Sunday, whenever they play the game, get everybody together and say, oh, look, that's the plan, go out and give it a go, right? So we need to have a playbook. We need to have a plan. And part of what we're trying to do today is just opening you guys up to putting a financial budget together. Now, some of you may have it. Hands up if anybody's got one. Okay, that's great. Hands up if everybody's thought of having one. I think everybody's hands should be going there. So what we want to do, as I said, It's a workshop. We're going to do one today, and I'll have a chat to Steve later because we might try and do some follow-up, because it's really important to me and it's important to Steve as well that you get as much value out of this, but you actually put it into practice and you do something. We don't just want you coming up here today and everybody's getting happy and learning a whole lot of stuff and then walking away and it just goes down because life gets too busy, okay? All right, so that's the journey. So I'm going to break it down business. What have I got? There you go. I've done a lot of stuff. I've studied a lot of places around the world, and honestly, I've seen a lot of businesses. And the thing about business comes down to 5 things, right? 5 major things. How much cash you got in the bank? How much money's coming in? How much money's going out? What is the thing that we need to do to make money? And are we measuring it? Okay? So I've got a client who's got a restaurant. So what's the thing he needs to do to make money? Pardon? Food and service. Okay, great. So how would he measure the food and service? How would he know at the end of one day whether or not he's made money, lost money, or broken even? Pardon? The number of covers, yes. So you've worked in a restaurant before, no? So it's the number of covers. Covers means tables. So we've got, I can count as well, 2, 4, 6. We've got 6 here, and if you turn over your tables twice, that'll be 12 covers. So for him, all we did was look at how many tables he had, what the estimated turnover of those tables was. So he had 100 tables, so we said, okay, times 2. We had to look at all his costs and his expenses on the day. We had to look at food costs, we had to look at booze, we had to look at staff, we had to look at rent, we had to look at all this sort of stuff. So don't get me wrong, there's a bit of analysis that we have to go through with it. But we did all of that, and then we came down to this figure that he has to have 200 people in there spending $50 a head a day, right? Now, things aren't going to move. Sometimes he's going to have more staff than he was supposed to or not. But as a business guy who's a non-accountant, if he just knows, right, I need 200 people at $50, he's adding that up. Every single person that walks in that door. It's pretty simple stuff for him. So I can ring him up that afternoon and said, how'd you go? And he said, okay, 250, we're supposed to bring in 10 grand, we brought in 11, and I actually had 180 people, but they spent about $60 each. So we're good, we made some money. And then the next day, then the next day, then the next day. It's pretty simple, isn't it, when you break it down like that? Now, that can be put to any business. It can be put to Sparkies. How many people did you go and see? It can be put to plumbers. It can be put to accountants. It can be put to doctors. What other businesses we got here? Shout them out. Manufacturing. We can do that too with that same thing. A little bit more complicated with manufacturing, but that's where the beginning of the work gets done, breaking down all the costs, and then you work out how much it bangs out. Larger manufacturing as well. I mean, Steve probably knows this. Machine hours, time, how much throughput, all this, you know, what do you got to get out of the end? What other businesses we got?
Professional services like accountancy firms, consultancy firms.
Yep, there you go. Do it to them as well. How many people come through? What's the average spend? Butchers. There you go, same thing. How many customers come through? What's your average cost of a beast? All right, go out, get it morning, chop it up, then you work out your average price overall. So we can do it to every single business. So the point is that 5 things: cash, money in, money out. What's your money maker? And are we measuring it? Cash. Do you know how much money's in your bank account? You don't have to tell me. Is it a business account or personal account? Okay. That you should know that, 100%. Business? Do you know how much money is in your business bank account this morning? No. Okay. Who else? Anybody else? Yeah, check zero. You did check zero this morning. Okay, so get that picture in your head, because you also realise zero might not be up to date 100% unless the bank fees work. So you've got a piece of information. Don't tell me what the number is. Get online to your NetBank, Commonwealth, Westpac, whatever, and double check if the figure is right. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes.
Checked your bank this morning? Or you know how much money this
Late
should be?
last night.
Late last night, right. Have that figure in your head, get online, have a look, see if the figure's exactly the same.
Yes, check this morning.
Check this morning? Okay. Gold star. The point is, we need to know how much cash is in the bank at all times. You know how many clients, like just individual clients, come along and I say, like, what's this? Oh, that's the gym membership. I said, when's the last time you went? Ooh, I keep driving past it. Feel guilty, so I keep paying. Come on, we all know these. You know, you got your spouse, I look at my wife's credit card, I'm like, what's that? Oh, that. Yeah, I bought some software, but they must have put it recurring every year. I forgot to cancel it. We have things coming out of our bank account on a regular basis that we don't check, we don't know, or whatever, which is pretty scary. Or sometimes we don't want to look at the bank or the credit card because that's more scary to look at it. But the point is that you need to know how much money's in your bank account at all times. And you need to know how much money is coming in, and you need to know how much money's going out. So, money in. Who here's got a cash business? I'm not from the ATO, it's okay. Cash business, okay. Cash businesses are fantastic. There's an old story about a greengrocer and a restaurateur, okay? Well, maybe not the restaurateur, let's call it the accountant, right? The greengrocer and the accountant. So the accountant, we don't take cash, or usually, although brown paper bags are welcome up the back. The greengrocer knows on Friday whether or not he's taking the family or she's taking the family to the restaurant or to the club. Because every single morning they've got cash in their pocket. They go to the markets, they pick up all the produce. They go back to the shop, they sell the produce. And whatever's left in the hand at the end of the day, I mean, apart from rent and all that sort of stuff, is pretty much profit. So they have a really good understanding of how much cash they got and how much cash has come in and how much cash has gone out. So they know exactly where they're sitting. And they also know what they've got to do to make some more cash. The problem is, with someone like myself or any other business around here that punches out invoices, you know what's coming in, kind of, because you've raised the invoices, but do you really have control when people are going to pay you? No? No, I'm with you, sister. Oh, yeah. Hey? Taking him to court, nothing happens, putting more judgments in, oh, we've got other bills, we haven't. You've got no control whatsoever about other people paying your bills. So, it gets complicated about when money's coming in. Because you can do your best guess, and that's about it. Now, what about bills going out? Sometimes we pay cash, right? Coffees, office works, this sort of thing. Other times we've got invoices. We've got invoices. Now, what happens with those invoices from our suppliers? Are they all on the same payment terms? Hey, some people do 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, end of month. Tax department do whenever you've got it, if you've got the money there, and if you don't, they'll fine and penalise you. But the point is, we have a little bit more control over what we spend and how we spend it, as opposed to the money coming in the door. And if we don't pay people on time, we start to lose goodwill with those people, right? We start to piss them off. And the next thing you know, we end up in that bucket of 10,729 people who went insolvent last year. And we don't want to do that. So, what you need to do is you need to know your cash in, your cash, your money in, your money out, and you need to know the thing that you need to be doing. So I'll give you also an example of not just financial thing that you need to be doing, but knowing your numbers in your business about what actions you need to be doing to get this result you want. So I'll give you an example. We had a young lady from Brazil, new client, it's pretty good. And she was selling Brazilian bikini wear. She had big dreams. I said, what's the plan? She said, well, in 5 years, okay, 5 years, I want to be turning over $10 million. I thought, that is awesome. Where's my point, lady? What's the point? Where's the goal? There you go. Thank you. What a great goal, okay? So we got 10 million. So I said, fantastic. Now, to get 10 million, what do we need to do? How are we going to sell it? She said, well, I've organised that too. I'm going to have 100 distributors and they're going to sell $100,000 a pop. So we go into these stores, they've already got a fashion label, and then we just go and have our little brand there. And I said, okay, that's fantastic. So 100 distributors you need to get over the next 5 years. So what's that, 100 over the next 5 years? It should be divided, shouldn't it? Divided by 5, so we need 20 per year. Okay, so that's 100 people that we've brought into our lives. Great. So in order to get those 100 people, how many meetings do you have to get them on board? Because you don't just, I mean, who in business here has ever walked up to a client, said, okay, well in 5 years you're going to sell $100,000, thanks very much, sign here. Are they going to do that? I don't think so. So in order to get the 100 distributors, I said, how many times do you have to go and meet with them? Give them samples, blah, 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 blah. She said, thought of that too. About 5 times. I said, okay, great. So that means we've got 100 times 5, what's that, 500? So we've got 500 meetings. Wow, that's a lot of meetings. I said, great. So in order to get those meetings, how many phone calls did you have to make? Who here does cold calling or gets referrals or whatever? So what's your hit rate on making phone calls to actually landing a meeting?
I've done cold calling in the past, but I sell jewellery and it would be 70% because I pick my mark, but I'm selling to shops. But cold calling is sort of call 20, maybe sell to 1.
Okay, so yeah.
It's straight cold calling to the public.
Straight cold calling, but then you've refined your market a lot better. You've worked out who you need to contact.
I sell to retailers,
Yeah, okay, we're already in the business. Okay, anyone else?
We do it.
Pardon?
It's pretty decent clothing group, we do it.
Yeah?
Yeah, both Darren and I actually, occasionally ring customers.
So you have to ring a lot of people before you can actually land one meeting. And then you have to, I mean, particularly if you're selling jewellery, you're going to have to meet them several times. They're going to come back. You're going to negotiate. Never discount, by the way. Always negotiate. You're going to do all that. So we came up to this figure. We said, look, if you, let's say you called 10 people, or you had to make 10 phone calls to get those meetings. So now we've got 500 meetings times 10 calls, which is 5,000 contacts. Meetings, blah, 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 over 5 years. She sat there and went, oh, okay. Right. I said, well, you want to do 10 million? Yeah, I want to do 10 million. So that's the old Northern Territory trick. I'm going to Northern Territory. Then when you start to break it down and tell them exactly what they need to do, like we did on the last sheet, and really start to think about it and put an action plan together, all of a sudden it started to get a little bit scary. Because, you know, it hurts to think. It hurts to go through these things. So anyway, so we said to her, right, 5,000. Now, being an accountant, I'm trying to simplify things and only think there's 50 weeks in a year just to make things easy. So over 5 years, we need to make 1,000 phone calls, right? So we need to make 1,000 per year. 1,000 divided by 50, what's that, 40? No, 1,000 divided by 50, sorry, 20. Yep, that's right. Cool. I'm getting there. So I need to make 20 phone calls a week. Divided by 5, I need to make 4 a day. I said, so in order for you to get there, you need to make 4 phone calls every day. How many phone calls did you make yesterday? Guess what she said? I said, how many phone calls are you making today? I said, how many phone calls you got organised for tomorrow? None. I said, all right. So if we need to get $10 million in 5 years, we need 100 distributors, $100,000 each. You need to have 5 meetings, which is 500 meetings. You need to make 10 phone calls, which is 5,000 phone calls, which means every single day you need to be making 4 phone calls. She's like, wow. Okay. Now I know what I need to do. So you need to break down in your business too about what are the things that you need to do consistently and persistently in order to get your desired result, your goal. What are the numbers? What are the metrics? What are these things? Restaurant, it was the tables, the covers, right? This lady was making the phone calls. Yeah, of course there's a whole bunch of other stuff she's got to do along the way too, but this is one of the key drivers in the business which is going to get her where she's supposed to go. So it gets back. We've talked about cash, we've talked about money in, money out, and our money maker. So that's good. So now she knows what the money maker will be. It will be making these phone calls to get these people. So the last thing there is measuring. Now, who yelled out provisions when we were talking about Northern Territory? Who was that? Geez, the back of the room. Gold stars all around. So here's the thing. It's about the provisions. It's about measuring. So if we decided to have, a truck full of water and then we ran out on the water all the way along, then we're going to run out of steam at the end. So what we need to do is every single day after we've consumed the water, we need to measure it. We need to measure how much we've done. We need to measure how much we've eaten. We need to measure how much longer, we can last.
But you can pick up water on the way if you go from watering hole to watering hole like Mr. Stewart did.
Well, you could do that too. You could do that too. But then you hope somebody hasn't poisoned it right in front of you, don't you? Yeah. There you go. That's a bit risky. But anyway, it's a possibility. If you do run out of stuff, you have alternatives, but at least you've got a plan. So we need to measure it. So here's another little story or analogy. I actually came up with this. I didn't rip it off anybody. I look at business like a tennis game, okay? So what's the idea of tennis? Wimbledon. What's the plan? Win the trophy at the end. Okay, pretty simple. That's the goal. How do you win the trophy? Okay, to win the trophy, you have to win the final match. And to win that match, you have to win a whole bunch of other matches. And to win the match, you need to win the sets. And to win the sets, you need to win the games. And to win the games, you need to have best baseline drive, best volley, best foot faults, best serves, all of these things. So in order to get to the end, you need to measure these things on the way. And they're the statistics they bring up every single time. And so if you concentrate on measuring these things in your business on a regular basis, it actually helps you predict what's going to be happening in the future. Now, the problem is that accounting generally is pretty boring, okay? And it is. I mean, when you look at it, you go to somebody, if you've got somebody external, you organise the meeting, you know it's going to be bad news, right? You're going to say, oh, he's going to go with the Bass's this. You go, oh, the Bass's this, what? Where am I going to get that from? Oh, well, you've still got that extended line of credit you can use. No, I used it last week. Right? So the problem is that if you don't measure these things, you're going to get a rude shock. If you don't measure how much water's there and you're halfway to Northern Territory, you're like, okay, I'm really hungry, where's the space food sticks? And they're like, oh, they're all gone. It's like, what are we going to do? So your business needs to be the same. Going to an accountant at the end of every quarter or yearly is like looking through a rear vision mirror. It's happened. It's gone. Forget it. You can't do anything about it. Right? It's like what Steve was saying before. People turn up the account and they go, oh, I think you've had a pretty good year. And then you have a look at the metrics, you have a look at the measurements. You're like, no. You might feel like you had a pretty good year, but you didn't. So what we need to do is we need to measure these things in our business on a regular basis. So knowing where your business is at is about cash, is about money in, it's about money out. Remember, it gets a little bit complicated. It's about your money maker, and it's about measuring. It's a really good book I've read about 5 or 6 times. It's called Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And one of his key things that he says that has helped, this is about a guy, I think it was 1917, it sold over 72 million copies, and he was going around seeing 500 of the most wealthy and successful people in the States. Andrew Carnegie, Teddy Roosevelt, Henry Ford, a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, go and check it out. 13 Rules of Success, but one of the major ones was a mastermind group. And so what a mastermind group really means is people of like-minded, that you can come together and you can start challenging each other. And this is exactly the sort of thing that this program here provides. So I applaud everybody for actually coming along and being part of the team, and also the VIP members. You can get so much value out of sharing stories. I mean, it doesn't have to be bearing all, but it can talk about different things that goes on. God knows I have problems in my business on a daily basis. So I've got my mastermind as well that I talk to and bitch and whinge to and all of that sort of stuff. Anyway, all right, let's get going. So what is a budget? So what I've done in that little workbook handout is I've tried to just summarise what we discussed before. So if you can flick over to, keep going. All right, so we've got a thing called a budget there on about the 3rd page. So what I want everybody to do, and this is compulsory, I will be checking while we play the elevated music, I want you to write down what your sales lines are, okay? So for me, as an accountant, we've got bookkeeping, we've got payroll, we've got business advisory, blah, 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 we've got a whole bunch of other stuff. Like a shoe seller might have men's shoes, women's shoes. A Sparky might have labour and parts. A builder probably would have many different things, whatever. I would love you guys to write down what your sales lines are, please. Now, if anybody wants some help, stick your hand up and I'm happy to come around and have a chat. Can we cue some music, please? And I want you to, it doesn't have to be your real number, but I want you to put a yearly, if you want to put your real number, put your real number, but put what you think the budget for next year is. So, you know, whatever, it's $1 million, it's 1.2, it's 100,000, it's 50 grand, it's 40 grand. Whatever it is, what you think the budget from the sales of that will be next year, it's a budget. You can base it on last year or you can look forward to next year, but the yearly budget, okay? So we're going to spend about 3 minutes doing that. It's all right, we can't hear that, you can turn it up a bit. So just have a crack. Now, if you don't have a business yet and you're thinking about a business, then put down what you think that business is going to be. Breaker, there you go. Look, I just had a really good question. That was about a photography company, and it was photography sales and print sales. So I view accounting as, do you remember that little game when probably the age of my daughter over there, where you had the star and the hole and the triangle, and you had to stick it in the right hole? That's pretty much accounting, right? Seriously, it's just, there's the bank and we'll put that one there and that one there and that one there. So you can have, and I call them buckets, so you can have as many sales buckets as you like. So for the photography, we could have as simple as 2. Photographic packages and print sales, or we could say photographic packages, corporate, weddings, special birthdays. Like, you can break it down in many different things. So what I now want you to do in terms of the costs, and I was just talking to a lady up the back, so she was talking about clothing. I said, well, you could have it men's clothing, women's clothing, kids' clothing, or you could have it shoes, apparel, accessories, you know, whatever it is. With the cost, have a crack at trying to, you don't have to put the figures if you can't work it out, but have a crack at putting down what the costs are for you delivering that service. So, for example, for me, accounting, if I'm doing bookkeeping, then my cost is one of our kids, I use the term loosely, he's a CPA, doing the work. So I put his cost, so, you know, if we charge out at $300 an hour, then his costs are going to be 100, 150 or whatever. If you're selling shoes, obviously you've got, I don't know, let's say, you know, women's shoes, and then you know what your cost price is as well. Let's just talk big figures, because otherwise we can get into the smaller stuff, like it could be brown women's shoes, black women's shoes, high heels, you know, no heel, blah, blah, blah. And each of those will have a different cost. But the purpose of this is just to really get you into the understanding about having your sales and trying to attribute that cost to that sale. We do have expenses, which will be on the next page. So what we're looking at now is, I'm trying not to use accounting speak, but it's called variable cost. So what it means is that what does it cost me to deliver that one item, right? So accounting, or is it men's shirt? So the cost to deliver that men's shirt will be the cost, the fabric, and actually somebody sewing it up. The other costs will be the expenses down the track. So we're going to take another 3 minutes, try and figure out what some of the costs are. Stick your hand up if you need some help. Hello? Okay, so I just had a look at a couple of other people, and they're struggling a bit into, well, not struggling, but it's like, well, I'm writing loans, so I'm getting fees and commission, so what's my cost? Well, in that situation, the cost is time. And then we just had another chat to a gentleman who's running personal training. So again, that comes down to either your time and you put a dollar value on time, or you put a dollar value on the person who's working for you. This is actually another, I mean, while we're on the point of time, it's another big trap where people really, small business particularly falls foul. So years ago, my dad had a client, and they were doing tours, like, you know, they'd take those big buses and take out people from Probus or whatever on day trips. And so this woman used to spend the whole night cooking biscuits and cakes and packaging them and tying little bows and all that sort of stuff on them. And so we sat there and said, that's really good, why don't you just buy it? She said, well, if we just bought it and gave it to them, then we couldn't actually run the business because they can't afford, you know, these are pensioners or whatever, we're taking them out on the coach and they just wouldn't pay the money. Needless to say, their business was bankrupt in 2 years. She didn't value her time. So while you're in the business and you're spending all your time and effort, you also need to look at what would it cost me to hire somebody else to do that job, right? And this is where it comes back to cost. You think, oh, I don't have any cost because I'm doing mortgage broking. No, you do have cost. Your cost is your time. And if it's not your time and you don't, oh, well, I don't charge for it, I'm not actually getting payment out of my business because, you know, all businesses don't make any money in the first 2 years. That's rubbish. That's what people who don't make money say, okay? Because it makes them feel better. You need to value your time and you need to make sure that you put it accordingly. Okay? All right, now, so anybody else need help on costs? Now, we call it cost of sales when it's a service business. We call it cost of goods sold when we're actually selling goods. Kind of makes sense. All right, so we're going to do another 3 minutes now. If you flip over the page, we've got expenses. Now, I've given you an example of some expenses. There's a whole lot more. Some are general, but there will be some specific to you guys. So if you can just have a crack and start writing down as many as possible. This is another one of my, you know, where you put the buckets, where you chuck the stuff. The technical term is actually called a chart of accounts. But anyway, fill your boots. We'll have some music. Thank you. Hello. Hey, listen, we've got some other good questions too, and people are struggling a little bit. What's the difference between a cost of sale and actual expense? So if you think about it this, an actual expense is something we spend regardless of whether or not we get business. Insurance, rent. So here's a good example. It's like, oh, well, I don't pay rent because I'm running it out of my place. Well, you're running it out of your place, I agree, but if you weren't running it out of your place and somebody else was running it, so we can have a look whether this business stands on its own 2 feet, you have to factor in part of your home rent, even though you're paying for it, or even if you own your house, factor in what the actual rent would cost, because you have to get a clear appreciation of whether or not the business stands on its own legs. So anything, bank fees, you've got to pay those regardless. Insurance, fees for, I don't know, even advertising. Advertising is an expense because we're not 100% sure that if we spend the $2 today, it means I'm going to get $3 next week. So anything that you can attribute directly to that income, like, you know, doing personal training on the day and then hiring some guy to come along and do the personal training, and then if the night before you can cancel that and you can cancel him, then that's a cost of sale because you need him to do it. He's not turning up. You don't have to pay him. So any staff, admin staff, any consulting staff, but any contractors that are used for the income, you can put in cost of sales. All right? Absolutely, because whether or not you get $1 or you don't get $1, either you own the car, which means you can get depreciation on it, or if you're leasing the car, you still got to pay the lease costs. I don't think GE's that nice anymore these days and go, oh, I had a bad month, is that okay? Well, GE or a Sander or who were the scumbag, I don't know, Suncorp. I didn't say anything. Well, what's that great deal at Harvey Norman? It's interest-free for 60 months, but if you don't pay on the day, we'll charge you 30%. Yeah. Okay, how are we going? Steve? Okay, good stuff. All right, now, so what we've got then, now if you have been good enough to try and put some yearly values towards that, we're going to flip over now. And what the purpose of this exercise is that we've now broken that up into 12 months. Because guess what? Business is seasonal. Doesn't always happen. We don't do 120 grand for the year and then we get 10 grand coming in every month. I heard this guy talk once. He said, you know, business is like the seasons. You know, you got up and down and, you know, spring, summer, autumn, winter, but the Americans call it fall because that's usually when things start falling apart before the winter where business is crap and there's nobody around. You know, anyway. So what I want you to do now, if we can have some music again, we'll just spend another 3 or 5 minutes. I want you to try and get that figure that you put in sales and costs and expenses and try and extrapolate it over the 12 months and have a think about your business and what's cyclical. So bank fees are constant, right? Your accounting fees might be at the end of the year. For us, income, you know, we get a fair bit of individual stuff around September, October, November, and then we get slammed in April, May and June for the following year with business stuff because accountants get longer to lodge tax returns. So, you know, if you're on an accountant, you actually don't have to lodge till the following May. If you do it yourself, you probably have to get it done by October. So have a think around, it's not about perfection, it's about a bit of progress. And just really put your head around trying to split this up in terms of the 12 periods, please. Now, I've got to say, seriously, while we're making a bit lighthearted of this, it is the most important thing that you can do in your business. It is, honest to God, the most important thing. Because from this, you work out whether or not your business needs cash when it needs cash. Sometimes you might have amazingly profitable business, but there's about 3 months where you need to get an overdraft to pull yourself through because it goes up and down. Now, going back to what we said before, people who don't plan those things and then all of a sudden it falls on their lap, you lose a business that is technically profitable, but you just haven't thought about it and stored it. Now, the interesting thing about that bloke who told me about business being cyclical, he said what usually happens is if you're a farmer, you understand the weather, right? Have we all heard that, what's that phrase, make hay while the sun shines? So a farmer during the summer months will get the hay or the wood or whatever, and they'll stick it as autumn comes or fall comes in the shed as feed for if they got cattle. And then during the winter months when there's nothing else around, they've got it all stored there and they feed the cows, feed the animals, feed whatever. And then summer comes again and everything's great. But they have the foresight because they know what's happening. What we do as business people is if we don't plan properly, we get to the fall or we get to the autumn and then all of a sudden it's like, well, where are the reserves? Where's all the hay in the shed? Oh, it's not there. Your business falls down because you can't hang on till summer when things are going to be up again. So, you know, in these times when the economy is, you know, a bit up and down, or when your business is up and down, when things fall tough, you should have a wad of cash there because the cash that you made on the previous time, you should be stowing away, putting away and having it there ready. And the thing that stops you, although I hate to say this, is your passion about your business. The thing that stops you being financially successful sometimes is your passion about your business, because nobody sat down and done the numbers with you, because you're spending all the time by yourself trying to run the business and not valuing your time and not really understanding whether or not this business is viable. I'm not saying business for you isn't viable, but it might mean this particular business that you're currently doing isn't viable. So by not knowing your numbers, you are giving yourself a false sense of security. Shaz had a really interesting dilemma because their business is actually providing food for people, for families and helping them out. So it's like, well, how do I get sales? How do I get costs? So for something like that, it's still exactly the same formula, but we just need to change our thought process a bit because they don't have costs because they've got volunteers. But if we had more volunteers, then we could actually do more work. And if we got more donations, income, then we could actually provide more. So I said, well, how many families did you feed last year? They said 500. I said, how many do you want to feed? She said, 5,000. I said, great. There we go. We're up to the numbers game again. but still putting together, because it's not about, we can use the term profit in profit companies, but here it's about surplus. I don't like ever using the word not-for-profit, because if you have the mentality you're not there to make a profit, it's ridiculous. A profit in a not-for-profit is a surplus to provide more services to the people who help. So you've got to make as much money as possible or as much services as possible so you can give back even more the following year. You've got to have that business mentality. So, as I said, I'm going to be around for the whole 2 days anyway, and everybody's welcome to come up and have a chat and talk about anything going forward, all right? Okay, have everybody had a crack? Look, I can't even remember. I think a mate of mine said in America they've got this, oh no, what was it? No, he's telling me most people find it difficult to think, right? Seriously. And because you have to sit down, you have to try and get quiet, you have to do stuff. We all prefer to do stuff that we like to do. Numbers for people who aren't numbers orientated, and particularly because you've got that little voice in your head that says what? I'm no good at numbers. I'm no good at numbers. What did Henry Ford say? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Okay? So all you have to say is, you know, I'm numerically challenged, but I'm working on it. Okay? We should start a group, shouldn't we? Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm numerically challenged. Well, I'm grammatically challenged, but numbers are right. Okay, so, yes, get rid of that voice in your head that says, I'm no good at this. And also, the other thing I need to tell you is, if you don't control your numbers, don't go bitching about the accountant you're using, because it's not their fault. It's your fault. It's your business. Don't ever abrogate the responsibility of your livelihood, your family's livelihood, your house, your time and your effort, and blame an accountant because you don't have your head around the numbers because it's all too difficult for you. Like, you know, are you going to be in the game or on the bleachers? It's your game. You need to get your head around the numbers. That voice that says I'm no good at numbers has to go away. And hopefully with some of the stories I've given you, it kind of changes your thinking about it. Everybody here is capable. I mean, for God's sake, you know how to turn up to an event like this. So you've all got the ability to actually understand your numbers and work on it, and not to be like the 10,729 people last year who went bankrupt or insolvent. That's not what we want. Okay. Have we done that? All right, so what are the 5 things you need to know? Come on! What else? And? Okay, all right. Where are we up to? We're nearly there, folks. And by the way, thanks for putting me on. I said, don't pump me on after lunch, because everybody just who? What? Okay. We're going to wrap up now. Right, so if you go back to this, just in summary, right? We go back to planning, okay? So it's most important. Go back to that analogy about going to the Northern Territory. We must plan. Plan, plan, plan. This thing is doing plan. Now, I'm going to have a talk to Steve later, and while I can't sit down with everybody individually and kick your proverbials to try and get you this, maybe you can put on a special webinar or something, Steve, and we can get people to send in their budgets, and then we can talk generally about it. And then I'm also happy to probably spend a little bit of time, 10 minutes or whatever, for each person on that or afterwards.
Yep.
For those who are really putting the effort in to do this. Like, you know, I'm happy to help people if they want to help themselves. And, you know, that's why you're here. I'm sure Steve's the same way. So I'm happy to put my time aside. You know, we don't get paid for come down here. We do it because we want to help businesses, we want to help families, and we want to make a difference. One of the biggest reasons why businesses fail or families fall apart is money. Right? It's money. It's the nexus of fights in families or communication around money. It causes, people die. People get depressed, people get divorced, people get in more debt, people get into drugs and drinking. It's disgusting. you have a responsibility to yourselves and to your family to get your head around your numbers, right? And I'm happy to help. I really am. Our whole firm, that's what we're out for. As I said, to enable and educate Australians. Steve's happy to help. Everybody he's got here coming along is happy to help. But you need to take the initiative, okay? So I'll be happy to put on that special webinar where we can make sure that people are going through with it, all right?
Beauty. What do you guys think? Yeah? All right, rock and roll. We'll lock that in.
Okay, so planning. Now, measure. Remember the tennis game? You've got to measure these things. So the first thing that you really have to do is, as I said, and you had those little talks with everybody before, is what do we need to measure? So sit down, kick it around. If you meet somebody here at the course who you connect with, and we're doing the networking thing afterwards, have a buddy. Get a responsibility buddy or accountability buddy where you can ring up and start having a couple of chats. Watch out, you ladies. You're getting on too well out there. Okay, the other thing I just want to touch on, because we've only got a few minutes left, is choosing an accountant, right? So I had a bit of a whinge before saying it's your responsibility, and it is. But you need to understand that accounting these days is like being a GP, general practice medical doctor, that they don't know everything. Okay, and you need to ask questions and you need to probe, and they're not the all be all and end all, and you can challenge them. And you need to find someone who sorts you out specifically and knows your business, right? That is in the game with you, not in the bleachers, as I said before. Somebody who's going on your journey, but you've got to know what your journey is. And also, a good accountant doesn't know everything, but they know where to throw you. So, a doctor will say, oh, that's a bit bad, that skin. You need to go see a dermatologist. But I'll get a full report back and I'll sort it out and I'll make sure I'm looking after you. So they've still got the complete care of you, but they're sending you in the right direction. You need to find an accountant that you can work with, that you can talk to, that you can trust, that'll answer your phone calls and who gets you and gets your dream. Because business is tough. I mean, my dad had an accounting practice. I've grown up in a family business. We had sawmills. We owned 3 sawmills, and in that year, like 5 other sawmillers committed suicide. So business is extremely tough, and well done everybody here for actually having a crack. Because, over the years, sometimes I've wondered myself, it's like, why don't you just go and get a job? But you're here, okay? So you have to find your team. And it's not just an accountant. Then if you need a good lawyer, it's a lawyer. If you need a financial planner, it's a financial planner. You have to assemble your team around you, your support network. You're going to Northern Territory. Who's driving the truck? Who's doing the medical? Who's going to motivate you? Who's going to pick up when you fall down and you're all over the shop, right? You need to have a support network as well. And sometimes it's not just your family, because they've got enough struggle to go through. And I hate to say it too, that sometimes your family and your friends are the worst people to ask advice from, okay? And you know why though? It's because they love you so much that they don't want to see you fail. They are so scared that you're going to fail that every time that you come up with something, they try and knock it down. It's not because, trust me, I know. It sounds like they're having a go and they're trying to put you down and totally deflate you. But they just love you so much that they're afraid you're going to fall on your face, and they don't want to see that happen. So you've got to get that support team around you. You've got to choose a good accountant, one who works with you, meshes with you, gets your headspace. Okay? What do you reckon? Yeah. Okay, solutions, measuring solutions. So, look, there's accounting systems out there, and again, don't just say, oh, I'm going to go to Xero because, everybody's going to Xero, or I'm going to SASU, and most of you are going to say, what's SASU? MYOB, oh, well, everybody else uses MYOB, so that's good for me. You need a really good system whereby you can track your sales, you can track your costs, and you can track your expenses, because basically at the end of the day, what it is to make good decisions, whether it's running a company that's turning over 100 grand or running a company that's turning over $200 million, I need information that is correct and that is timely so I can make business decisions. And I need to have that to make those decisions. If I don't have that, I'm making decisions out of seat of my pants, gut instinct, all of that sort of stuff. So you need to get a good accounting system whereby you can have a look. This lady over here is on Xero. She checked her Xero this morning. Xero's a fantastic product. We set a lot of people up with it. We really do. I've been using MYOB since 1992 when it first came out, well, 90 when it was a Mac product. It was just a Mac product. I mean, it's come a long way. Sasu's another good online package. I'll be around for 2 days anyway if anybody wants to talk to me about any of these programs. As I said, we do a lot of this. At the moment, we're doing a lot of Xero. Because one good thing about that is everybody's got a smartphone, is that with Xero and Sasu, you've got all these other apps. So if you're a tradie, there's great apps. If you're, whatever, there's so many different apps you can get. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for me. I hope we got our desired outcome, which is I wanted everybody to get a financial budget together for the next 12 months. Did we kind of get there, or we're nearly there? Hello? Yes? We're going for a break now. We don't have to listen to the boring accountant anymore. All right, listen, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here. I am so glad that you're all here. It's a great place to be with this guy. I love him dearly, and he really cares, which I think is the biggest difference in business with a lot of people. He wants everybody of you guys to succeed, as do we. It's been my absolute pleasure to be able to spend some of my time with you guys, and hopefully I've been able to make a bit of an impact. I'm sure I have, and I'll be around for the next 2 days. Thanks very much.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
All right, so quickly, questions. Do you want to chuck anything at Andrew while he's here?
Yes.
Yeah, Pete.
You said something that in regards to your accountant understanding your business.
Yeah.
I went through that. After 7 years of business, I had an accountant that had a big firm, retired, working under his house. And I got to the point where I did my financial return, and he was excited. He said, "I'm getting your $9,000 back." And I just went like that. And I tried to communicate with him, and we just didn't have a relationship. I swapped accountants. I said, "Don't send that through." I swapped accountants, which was really awkward to swap accountants when you have that relationship for so long. And I went from $9,000 back to $61,000 back. Yeah. And I found an accountant that understood what he said was commercial thinking. For thinking commercially. I think that's really important for accountant stuff.
No, that's a really good point. I would say one thing though, don't measure an accountant on how much money they get you back, right? I'll tell you why. Because if you find the right accountant with the right structures in place in the first place, it might be you haven't actually paid the 60 grand to get the 60 grand back. Okay.
It was a good move though at that stage, because there was a lot of stuff going on in the
No, but it really is, and that's why, I mean, you need to interview accountants. You need to get, not everybody gets on, okay? Surprisingly, not everybody likes me. I mean...
And it's actually interesting you say that, because sometimes we look at accountants and we take it for granted that what they give us is gospel.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, guys, we are the ones that sign on that dotted line. We are accountable. If it doesn't sound right or feel right, you just throw it back and say, "I would like to question this, this and this. Can you please explain?"
Well, look, I've got a check sheet that you should do before you go and have a talk to an accountant, like basically an interview and get to know them. So I'm happy to flick it and then you guys can have a look. But it's a long-term, Schindler's List. He said, apparently his father said to him, "There's 2 things you need in life, a good doctor and a good accountant." Okay? They put them at that sort of thing. And you're 7, 9 years with somebody who you really didn't like, and it was that hard to get away from them again? It was a right breakup. Exactly. It's not easy. So that's why when you go into it, you really need to spend time, get to know each other, and make sure you're friends, and make sure you get on, and make sure things. And the thing is too, as I said, an accountant has to know so much. You need to ask the questions. You need to educate yourself. You need to be responsible and take accountability for your numbers. But equally, you need somebody who's going to help guide and mentor you. So it's not just about doing the tax return. It's actually about sitting down with you on a monthly basis and saying, "Right, where are we going? What are we doing? What do you need from me?" Whatever. But it's your responsibility too for you to get some education yourself to say, "Hey, I've heard about trusts, or I've heard about this business, or I'm thinking about buying a business. What do you think about finding companies that are in liquidation and us buying them out? I'm trying to grow my business. I'm trying to do this." Now, most accountants will be pretty smart and they go, "Oh, actually, yeah, really good question. We'll go through it." But you need to take some responsibility because they're not infallible at all. They're just like everybody else. And, that you just need that relationship. Okay? You just need to find someone who works with you well with you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pete. Karen?
So I just want to know, with Xero, what is the role of an a bookkeeper
Yeah.
to have Xero? I'm just a bit confused.
Okay, the role of a bookkeeper is exactly the same as regardless of any other system. Xero is just a system, an accounting system. MYOB is an accounting system, SASU. A ledger, a handwritten ledger is just a system. So basically, what a bookkeeper does is has a look at the bank account and starts putting things in buckets, right? What we said before. Xero allows bank feeds to come through. So they say, okay, well, there was a payment to Optus. I'll put that in the telephone bucket. There was fuel from Shell. I'll put that in the fuel bucket. MYOB does the same thing, so you can get bank feeds in. SASU does exactly the same thing. So the bookkeeper will sit there and start putting the stuff in the relevant buckets. Just a bookkeeper will do that. If they're really, really good, they'll know how to do leases and all this other sort of stuff. If you've got an accountant who just sees you once a year, what they'll do is they'll have a look at what the bookkeeper has done and they'll tidy a few things up and they'll put some depreciation in and they'll do a whole bunch of other stuff. But getting Xero is not going to stop you having to get a bookkeeper or MYOB or SASU or anything else, right? So,
I just have a further question. So I've just been switched with my bookkeeper to Xero.
yeah.
But I'm finding that I don't have a time of the month, like we were saying earlier today, where the figures are completely all entered so that I can see it accurate. How do I manage the bookkeeper? What should I be saying to that person to manage it better so I can have an exact profile of my business at a particular time?
You should, when you enter into an agreement with a bookkeeper, have a contract with them which stipulates what you expect from them and what they expect from you. I expect you to do my books and I expect you to have a close off by the 5th or the 7th of the following month, and I expect you to present me a set of financial statements on that day which are accurate and correct. Okay? So you negotiate that before you actually get into something with somebody. It's like any other agreement or negotiation you do. Now, are you prepared to sign up to that, Mr. Bookkeeper, Mrs. Bookkeeper? If not, that's okay. I'll find somebody else who is. The same thing is, there might be things that you haven't done that are stopping the bookkeeper from doing their job too. So it needs to be a two-way, I'm sure the accountants are nodding their head here, a two-way thing that the client has certain obligations that they need to do and the accountant or bookkeeper or both also have certain obligations. It's basically about making sure that everybody knows where we stand, there's no ambiguity, and then there's integrity based on, I said I was going to do it, I actually do it.
Yeah, I think it's about expectations. Like Andrew said, as long as you say these are the goalposts, are we going to hit them? Yes or no? Then we go into that agreement. If it doesn't get hit, I think it's just like managing a team. You get your staff or anything, you say, well, these are the expectations. You make it really clear and really simple. If that doesn't get met, then there lies the conversation.
So you say around about the 7th or 8th would be a reasonable sort of...
Look, you know, when I used to work at massive companies overseas, we used to have a reporting by the 3rd or 4th day, but obviously we had big teams, so it depends on their workload and whatever. It comes down to, as I said, getting your financials, you need them correct and you need them timely when you need them, right? I probably don't think there's anything, it depends on their workload, but if you want them on the 7th, you should get them on the 7th. Find somebody who is prepared to be able to provide you the financials on the 7th.
Yeah, I just want to know how to manage because I've always been surviving and not thriving. I haven't asked for figures. So, and I might...
And you will now, right?
Excuse me, what's the point of looking because it probably isn't accurate. So I've just been looking at my point of sale system rather than my accounting software.
Yeah. No, you need to look at that, and then you need to understand your other 5 things.
Yeah.
The money, the cash, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, I want the figures, I want them to be right. I want them to be right. The quickest way to check your figures are right, get a balance sheet, have a look at the bank balance, then have a look at the bank balance in the bank. And not a lot of people use checks these days, so, you know, it should be pretty much right. Anyway, I'm around for 2 days, so we'll have a chat later.
Yeah, cool. And just lastly to finish that, I think if you give leeway with anything, you do with your kids, your staff, with anything, they will take it up to that nth degree.
Yeah.
Hopefully, now we've had this conversation, you've got to put some serious things in place. Business is serious. It's fun. It's everything else, but it's serious. Especially knowing your numbers. That should be up to date always. I think with Xero and the other technology we've got, it makes it easier now because you've got feeds coming in and
it makes it exceedingly possible to have really good information.
Up to date, on time figures.
Which, as I've said, it's not about looking in the past, it's about using that to try to create your own future.
Yep. Raise the bar. Raise the bar. Good enough is not acceptable anymore. We want your expectations here. We want them to be met. If you can't do it, that's cool. We're going to go find someone who can. All right. Guys, Andrew Jeffers, round of applause, please. Good stuff.